Welcome back, everyone. Today's media literacy lesson is about a different type of information that exists on the internet that is yet again problematic. We talked about misinformation and disinformation in a broad sense in last lesson. Today, we're going to talk about what I like to call, or what everyone calls, fake news. Now, that term itself has kind of been co-opted by people trying to make it seem like actual news is fake news because they disagree with it. But what we want to discuss today is legitimate, actual fake news. So information that is put out there that is meant to look like real, actual news produced by journalists, but is in fact not real news. It's actually something that's extraordinarily dangerous to the population. And we've seen that people believe this misinformation. If you look at this graph here, it shows a lot of different media sources, and you can see there's a lot of interconnectivity between these media sources. The larger sources kind of have a higher volume of traffic. I want you to look at, though, InfoWars, which is a site that we consider as journalists fake news. The information there is often conspiracy theories, things that are not based in any kind of factual evidence. Notice how removed that is from the rest of that graph. A lot of people are visiting it, but it's not connected to the kind of the rest of the news and information ecosystem. And when you see things like that, that very likely means that that's a place that's trafficking in this false information, in this fake news, so to speak. The next thing I want you to think about is this. Fake news, as we kind of call it now, has always really existed to some extent. Alternative narratives, conspiracy theories go way back into human history. One of the most famous ones from just before my lifetime was the John F. Kennedy assassination, where people discussed there's a second shooter, and people didn't want to kind of believe the news that was reported on that situation. But conspiracy theories have existed on the fringes of society for the most part. You might have known what it was or heard about it, but it was always whispered about. No one took them too seriously except for just that really fringe segment of the population. The internet has changed all of that. Now, if people have these conspiracy theories and they have enough charisma, they can broadcast these theories that are not based in any factual evidence to a much larger section of the population. And because they have a much larger reach, their platform inevitably grows. And if the information they're spreading, their conspiracy theories are spreading, are dangerous, they can themselves become a danger to the population. If they are presenting information that could lead to violence or information that could incite people to change their views politically or change the way they see things, they're dangerous. And that is what we see happening across the internet now, are these fake news sites that create these alternative narratives, and they create their own information ecosystem. And the people that take in that information have almost entirely divorced themselves from factual, evidence based reporting. And they no longer believe that media, and they kind of have created themselves their own little bubble. How that specifically works, I have linked a video onto today's lesson that I'd like for you to watch. And it talks about social bubbles and the filtering of the internet. And it's a TED Talk, it's really informative. And if you don't have time to watch kind of that little 7-8 minute video, a brief explanation is this. The internet as you know it is not really what you know. Because you are being tracked across the internet through Facebook, through Google, they're tracking you all over the place. They are trying to do that so that they can filter your results on their individual pages to more closely match with things that you like or agree with. Because of that, your Google may not look like someone else's Google, or your Facebook might not look like someone else's Facebook, because you are being filtered, meaning that everything you see has been put through this robotic filter. And it creates these information bubbles where you're only getting fed the information that the algorithm believes that you want, rather than maybe the just factual information you need. And so people that consistently fall down these wormholes of conspiracy theories get fed more and more conspiracy theories, more and more fake news. That's why you see people that are completely disconnected from other people because they are getting entirely different information. The other thing I want to talk about is if you look on the lesson for today, I break down how fake information and fake news sites try to use the media's coverage against them. They use fog of war reporting tactics. They try to use the media discrediting them as proof that they're covering something up. There's a lot of different tactics. So look at that information. I explain it a little bit more in detail there, which is it's just another tool in their arsenal. And it's created this situation where traditional journalists who are there to provide you with information and to kind of uplift our democracy and make our democracy even able to exist are in a tough battle because the more they attack fake news, the more fake news gains credibility just by being mentioned and is able to use the fact that they're mentioned as a way to generate more hits and spread their message to an even wider population. This is something that the majority of people believe should be fixed, that there needs to be some way we attack this situation. The problem is no one really knows the best way to go about doing it. And that's kind of what I would like to talk about for your lesson today. I want you to think about this fake news problem and think about what we've talked about as far as media literacy goes. And I want you to try to come up with your own solutions. And we will, and this is important because I think this is going to lead you to some conclusions you might not come up with if you weren't looking for solutions. If you were just looking through more fake information and determining whether or not it's fake, that's only kind of one part of the process. We also want to think about how do we go forward? How do we fix this situation? So here's today's lesson. It's just answering two questions for me. One, how should the public deal with this? Right? How should the public themselves deal with false information? Is this something that the public needs more coaching on? Is this an individual responsibility of people in the population to come up with how they are choosing to identify what's real and what's not? And the second one is should social media sites who do the most to amplify these messages, places like Facebook and Twitter, Instagram, they amplify these messages through advertising revenues and through algorithms that put them in your feed if you've clicked on something similar. Should they be responsible? Should they think about how to change this? And your opinion, I want you to really think about freedom of speech, freedom of expression. How do those play a role? Obviously, those are governmental controls, and private companies could still enact things that say you can't say this, right? But should they? That's another question. That's kind of an ethical question. So answer those two things for me. I would also like you, there's a link on there to play a game. So I'm also asking you to play a game today. It's called Republia Times. And it kind of mimics the situation of working under a regime that's forcing you to print false information. And I think it's a good reminder of the people in these oppressive situations that are trying to get out information. We don't always think about how difficult it is for them in this environment. So I'd like you to play that game as well and just get a sense of what that situation might be like. And we will be back with more media literacy coverage tomorrow.